Hello and welcome to the final This Week at the General Assembly for 2015. In today's program, we'll hit the highlights from the 2015 legislative session from the county perspective. Remember, you can always find more information on any of the items we discuss here by visiting www.ncacc.org. A public safety goal of counties this session was to allow public service answering points greater flexibility in the use of 911 funds. House Bill 506 would have accomplished this goal, but a late session change in House Bill 730 made some progress in this area. Here's NCACC Legislative Counsel San Hoekstra with more.
Increasing flexibility in the use of 911 funds has been a priority goal of the counties for several legislative sessions. Currently, the funds may be used to fund expenditures associated with call taking, and that is equipment such as the phone system, the furnishings, the hardware and the software inside the 911 call center. The dollars could not be used for any dispatch equipment from the call center, say, to the top of the tower or out to the emergency personnel who would respond to the emergency. The ability of the 911 telecommunicator to communicate with and provide information to the emergency responder, such as the EMS, fire, police, that is the quintessential purpose of the 911 system from the county standpoint. And so they've been very frustrated in not being able to use these dollars for that purpose. House Bill 730 will alleviate some of that frustration, as it will now allow counties to use PSAP grant dollars to purchase towers or construction costs and for other non-eligible costs. And so we were very pleased to see that increased flexibility in this legislation.
House Bill 730 was passed by unanimous vote by both the House and the Senate in the closing days of session. Changes in the timing of North Carolina elections were passed during this session. A new primary date has been set for 2016, and this changes the timing for candidate filing in North Carolina, as well as when citizens should go to the poll to vote. Here's Government Relations Director Joanna Reese with more on that.
The legislature moved the primary elections in North Carolina up this year from May to March 15th, shortening the primary campaign season by almost 2 months. They at first moved up only the presidential primary election, leaving the other races such as governor and the U.S. Senate and state legislative races at the May date. Counties were very concerned about the cost of holding 2 elections, which would be about an additional $9 million statewide, and we're also worried about possible confusion among voters and the overlap of holding candidate filing periods for one election at the same time as you're having early voting for another election. Legislators and others were worried about greatly reduced numbers of voters for the non-presidential election, which would have been the second primary. Ultimately, the legislature decided to combine all the primary elections into one, and they also set the bond referendum authorized this legislative session for the March date.
Remember, primaries will come earlier than usual in 2016. Mark March 15th, 2016 on your calendar now. Economic development is always a topic of interest to county governments, as they are always striving to help citizens find better employment and to improve the local economy. The NC Competes Act passed in the last days of session with some provisions that should help counties in those endeavors. Here's Legislative Coordinator Hugh Johnson with more.
The House and Senate introduced individual economic development legislation as early as March, but didn't agree on a final bill until the last days of session. They passed House Bill 117, which increases the JDIG program to $20 million annually, extends JDIG to 2019, and creates a new category for JDIG that would increase the program in the event a company invests at least $500 million and creates 1,750 jobs. House Bill 117 also includes changes to the One North Carolina Fund by amending local match requirements to direct more money to lower income counties. In addition to House Bill 117, the legislature included economic development incentives in the budget, increasing the film grant program to $30 million annually and reinstating the expired historic preservation tax credit program. Finally, the legislature approved a bill authorizing the first statewide general obligation bond in 15 years. This $2 billion bond, if approved in the March 2016 primary, would authorize $350 million for all 58 community colleges and almost $310 million for water infrastructure projects across the state.
The $2 billion bond will be on the March 15th, 2016 ballot, another good reason to mark that date on your calendar. The method used to distribute local sales taxes was a hot topic in this legislative session. Many plans were discussed, but the final plan ultimately gave struggling areas of the state some help through expansion of the sales tax base and some flexibility in existing taxes. Here's Joanna Reese with more on that.
The sales tax distribution conversation really defined the legislative session for counties. Some counties were strongly in support of, and others were strongly opposed to any plan that would change how existing sales taxes are distributed among the counties, depending on whether they were gaining or losing funds. Legislators started floating proposals really before the legislative session even began, and the debates around the different plans, some of which didn't even become public, continued until the budget passed, which contained the final compromise. Some early proposals turned 2% of local sales taxes into a state tax, which the state would then disperse to counties on a regular basis. Counties were opposed to this, as we were concerned that over time the amount that was sent back to the local governments would decrease as to compared to what they would have received under a local sales tax. Ultimately, the plan that was passed does not rearrange existing taxes among counties. It expands the sales tax base to some services and distributes this additional revenue to about 80 counties that are struggling more economically. It also adds some additional state funds to that pot being distributed. The new services being taxed are mainly repairs and maintenance on vehicles and appliances, and this will begin in March of next year. And while it'll vary from year to year, we're looking at about an additional $85 million in revenue to these counties, which will be required to use the money for public education, community colleges, or economic development, all of which are needs in those struggling regions that will be receiving these funds.
The expansion of the sales tax base begins on March 1st, 2016, and distribution of the new revenue will begin on July 1st, 2016. For more detail on that, visit our website at www.ncacc.org and view the session wrap-up document our government relations staff has prepared. Education is important to everyone in the state, since the future of the state depends on our youth. One of the obstacles in today's world of technology is access to internet for those living in underserved areas. House Bill 432 was meant to help in addressing that disparity. Here is Hugh Johnson with more.
In an effort to increase broadband internet access across the state, particularly in our rural areas, and satisfy one of our legislative goals, the NCACC worked with members of the House to introduce House Bill 432, which would give counties the ability to invest in internet infrastructure and lease that back to private internet service providers. Rather than competition with the private sector, this would very much be a partnership, similar to a public-private partnership for existing traditional infrastructure. Despite support from legislators, the bill was heard in committee but not voted on. Many legislators had heard similar stories to the ones that the association heard about students needing to go to McDonald's or private businesses after school to do homework or follow up on schoolwork because they didn't have internet access in their homes. We will continue to work on this throughout the interim and into the short session. And it should be noted that the legislature did include $12 million in the budget for the School Connectivity Initiative, which provides high-speed wireless internet directly to classrooms across the state.
The NCACC will continue to work on this issue to help those in underserved areas receive access to internet service. Well, there are the highlights for the 2015 legislative session. If you'd like more information on any of the topics we've discussed here, please visit www.ncacc.org. There you can find more information on the topics we've discussed here, view the legislative bulletins from this session, read the final legislative report, or follow us on social media. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.